This is a Tern X30 chainring. It has 53 teeth. It's a standard chainring. Has a 5-point fixing. It fixes to the spider arm on the crank. This is the Tern X30 chain guard. It's had a modification done to it. It's had a plastic spacer fitted to it. You can see the 5 fixing screws. The fixing screws are 5mm thread, countersunk, stainless steel, and a hex drive. On the back, the screws have been ground down and linished flat, so they're completely flush against the plastic spacer. You can see that plastic spacer is actually made of this nylon 6, which is a very tough nylon, a tough plastic, very durable. It's got a very low friction coefficient, not as good as PTFE, but it's tough, and it's something that the chain can slide up against and it doesn't wear or abrade. It's available in black, it's available in white, which is handy because the black matches the chain guard very nicely. What I've done here is that I've machined a recess in the plastic spacer, so the chain guard just sits inside the recess in that spacer quite neatly. On the back there we see where I've machined a diameter. The chain actually runs so that it's in between the outer diameter, which is slightly bigger than the chain guard, and the inner diameter, and it runs roughly in the middle of those two diameters. So the face of this is actually just clear of the chain, but when the chain wants to jump off, as it does occasionally, hopefully this spacer will just help the chain to stay in place. You can see there's a radius on the inside edge. That radius is there so that if the chain does jump off the chainring and onto the outer diameter, it will fall down, slide down that radius and back onto the teeth on the chainring. That's the theory. You can also see what I've done is I've put some spacers here. These spacers are 10mm spacers. They're self-adhesive on one side. They are a fibre washer base. Again, they're black, so it matches. They're quite neat. It's not metal, so it won't corrode. They'll stay in place for as long as I want them. They're about 1.5mm thick, so it just spaces the whole assembly, the guard and the spacer, away from the chainring, so I get just the right gap. Here we are, that's what they look like in position. Normally the gap there is just wider than the chain width. Unfortunately, what that means is that when the chain jumps, it'll fall down in the gap and jam. That's not what we want, not what we want when we're riding. A real nuisance. It's a time to get your hands really mucky to try and pull the chain out from that gap. What the spacer has done is move the two together, so that gap is actually quite a thin gap, about 1mm gap, so the chain has just enough room to run without all the time touching that spacer, all the time touching the chain guard. That's the theory. Now we'll see if it works in practice.